It was a crisp Monday morning when Jordan Carter stepped through the gleaming glass doors of the corporate tower he had built from the ground up. The building bore his name, Carter Innovations, etched in bold silver letters high above. The entrance, but none of that mattered in that moment. Dressed in jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers, Jordan didn't look like the kind of man who could buy out half the city. He didn't look like the founder, CEO, and sole owner of a billion-dollar tech empire. He looked like just another face in the crowd. And that's exactly how the front desk staff treated him. He had come in quietly, without an entourage, without fanfare. That was his style. Despite his wealth, Jordan never liked making a scene. He believed in knowing the heartbeat of his company, and that meant showing up unannounced sometimes, just to see how things really ran when no one knew the boss was watching. But today was different. As Jordan approached the reception desk, the woman seated behind it glanced up, gave him a tight smile, then quickly looked back down at her screen. She didn't ask if he needed help. She didn't greet him. She just kept typing. After a few awkward seconds, Jordan cleared his throat and said, "Good morning." The receptionist finally looked up. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone cool and dismissive. "I'm here to see someone," Jordan replied calmly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but then I'm sorry," she cut him off, eyes already back on the screen. "You'll need to leave. We don't allow visitors without scheduled appointments." Jordan raised an eyebrow but didn't react. He understood what was happening, and he had seen it too many times before. At that moment, a tall man in a navy blue suit walked briskly out of one of the glass-walled offices nearby. He glanced at Jordan, then walked directly to the receptionist. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, eyes narrowing at Jordan. "This man says he's here to see someone but doesn't have an appointment." The receptionist replied. The man turned to Jordan, sizing him up from head to toe. "Sir," he said sternly, "I think you're in the wrong place. This is a private business. I'll have to ask you to leave." Jordan let out a small breath, the kind you release when you're tired, but not surprised. "Actually," he said calmly, "I'm not in the wrong place." The man laughed lightly, shaking his head. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but you can't just walk in here like you own the place." "But I do," Jordan replied, his voice still even. Not a trace of anger in it. For a moment, silence fell. The man's eyes blinked rapidly, trying to process the words. The receptionist looked up again, clearly confused. Before either of them could respond, Jordan reached into his pocket and pulled out his ID card, black with gold trim, with the words "Founder and CEO" printed under his name. He placed it gently on the desk. "You can verify it if you'd like," he said. "I'll wait." The woman behind the desk took the card with trembling hands, her eyes darting between the name and the man standing before her. The man in the suit stepped back slightly, color draining from his face. Just then, the security guard, who had been called over silently during the exchange, arrived. He looked at Jordan and instantly stiffened. "Mr. Carter," the guard said respectfully, eyes widening. "I didn't know you were coming in today," Jordan nodded. That was the point. The receptionist now looked mortified. The man in the suit opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. They were all staring at the man they had just tried to kick out, only to realize he signed their paychecks. But Jordan wasn't there for revenge or a dramatic scene. He was there to see what kind of culture had grown inside the walls he built. And now he had seen it clearly. He picked up his ID and slipped it back into his pocket. "Let's pretend this didn't happen," he said softly. "But it will be remembered." And with that, he walked past them, deeper into the heart of the building that bore his name. At that same time, across town, a teenager named Malik sat quietly on the bus, earbuds in, staring out the window. 17 years old, smart, thoughtful, and always watching. Malik was on his way to a scholarship interview that could change his life. His mother had ironed his shirt 3 times that morning, double-checked his resume, and packed his bag with snacks just in case. He was nervous but focused. He knew opportunities like this didn't come easy, especially not for someone from his side of the city. He had studied hard, worked harder, and now this interview could be his stepping stone. As the bus rolled to a stop, a visibly pregnant woman climbed on. She looked exhausted, one hand resting on her lower back, the other gripping the rail for balance. Malik didn't hesitate. He stood up, removed his earbuds, and motioned for her to take his seat. The woman smiled, surprised and grateful. "Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am," Malik said. "Please." She sat down slowly, catching her breath. A few moments passed in silence before she turned to him again. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Not many young men would have done that," Malik just nodded. "It's how my mom raised me." When the bus finally stopped at her destination, she stood up and handed Malik a folded piece of paper. "Take this," she said. "I think you'll need it." Malik looked at it, puzzled. "What is it?" She just smiled, stepped off the bus, and disappeared into the crowd. Malik opened the note slowly, not sure what to expect. Inside were a few handwritten lines and a phone number. At the bottom, a signature, Amanda Carter. He had no idea that Amanda Carter was not just a stranger. She was the wife of Jordan Carter, the billionaire CEO, currently shaking up his own company. And Malik was about to find out that a simple act of kindness was going to open doors he never imagined and change everything. But what neither Jordan nor Malik knew was that someone inside Carter Innovations had been watching, waiting, and planning a move that would throw them both into a whirlwind of betrayal, power games, and hidden truths. Because kindness might open a door, but it also makes you a target, and the next time Jordan walks into his own company, he won't be alone. The elevator doors slid shut behind Jordan as he rose to the top floor, the one reserved for executive offices and confidential meetings. But today, the tension wasn't just coming from below. Something felt off. He could feel it in the silence, between the floors, in the tightness in his chest. For years, Jordan had poured his soul into Carter Innovations, building it from a worn-down garage with just one laptop and a dream into a global powerhouse. But now, as the empire grew, so did the distance between him and the people who worked inside these walls. The receptionist's behavior wasn't just rude, it was revealing. It showed a culture problem, one that had slipped through the cracks. While Jordan had been focused on expansion, investor meetings, and acquisitions, somewhere along the way, people had stopped seeing character. They only saw clothes, skin, and assumptions. And he wasn't going to let that continue. When the elevator stopped and the doors opened, he was greeted not by warmth but by confusion. A younger man in a tailored vest and polished shoes approached him quickly. His ID badge read Bryce McConnell, Director of Operations. "Can I help you, sir?" Bryce asked, trying to keep his tone neutral but clearly unsure why this casually. Dressed stranger was on the executive floor. "You can," Jordan said. "Where's Erica?" Erica Langston had been his right hand for almost 6 years, his executive assistant and the one person he trusted to keep everything running smoothly. Bryce blinked. She stepped out for a meeting with the vendor team. "Should be back in an hour," Jordan nodded and walked past him. Bryce turned and stared for a second, then reached for his phone. In the corner office, Jordan stood in front of the massive windows, looking down at the city. The skyline had changed since he started. But some things hadn't. People still underestimated him. They still made snap judgments. And while Jordan had become immune to it in his personal life, it was disturbing to see that culture seeping into his own company. He didn't hear the door open, but he felt someone step in. "Sir?" a voice said carefully. It was Bryce again. "You said you were looking for Erica. Maybe I can help?" Jordan turned slowly, studying him. Young, ambitious, probably well-educated, but there was something performative in his politeness. "You've been here how long, Bryce?" 2 years, sir. "And how many times have you seen me?" Bryce hesitated. "To be honest, I think only once. During a board presentation, but that was virtual." Jordan gave a small nod. "So you didn't recognize me downstairs?" Bryce's face paled. "No, sir, I didn't." Jordan sat down on the edge of the desk. "That's not your fault. But how you all treated me. That is—" Bryce looked down, the words catching in his throat, but Jordan didn't press him further. He just sat in silence for a moment, thinking. Somewhere down the hall, a printer clicked on and muffled footsteps echoed on the polished floor, normal sounds. But everything felt different now. Meanwhile, across the city, Malik was still standing at the bus stop, the note clutched in his hand like it was made of gold. He stared at the name Amanda Carter. The same last name as the CEO of Carter Innovations. Could it really be? The thought made his heart beat faster. He took out his phone and looked up the name. There it was. Amanda Carter, head of Carter Foundation, the nonprofit arm of the Carter Innovations empire. Her bio was impressive: degrees, charity work, education projects across the country. And now her number was sitting in his hand, but he didn't call. Not yet. Something about the moment felt bigger than just dialing a stranger. So he slipped the note carefully into his bag and kept walking toward the building where his interview was scheduled. He had a goal to focus on. He couldn't get distracted, not now. What he didn't know was that his name had already come up in a completely different conversation back at Carter Innovations. Erica had returned to the building and entered Jordan's office with a mixture of surprise and relief. "They told me what happened downstairs," she said quickly. "I'm so sorry." It's fine," Jordan interrupted, but his tone was clipped. "We have deeper issues." Erica glanced toward the glass wall, where a few employees had started peeking into the office, trying to understand why the founder was here unexpectedly. She walked over and lowered the blinds. "Something happened?" Jordan looked up at her. "Yeah, people forgot who this company belongs to." He stood and walked toward the table in the center of the office, where a pile of pending reports sat. As he flipped through them, he paused. One document caught his attention: a list of applicants for the Carter Foundation's new Youth Fellowship program. He scanned the names until he stopped at one. Malik Harris, age 17, GPA 4.0, community work. Recommendation from his principal. He looked up slowly. "Erica," he said, holding the paper up. "Why isn't this kid already accepted?" Erica stepped forward. "He's one of the finalists. Final interviews are this week." Jordan's expression hardened. "Move him up." Erica blinked. "Sir, you heard me and set a private meeting." "I want to talk to him myself." Erica nodded slowly, then left the office to make the arrangements. But she wasn't the only one taking notes. In a smaller office 3 doors down, someone had been watching everything. A man named Carter Davis, not related by blood, but a senior executive who believed the company should have been his by now. He had spent the last 5 years maneuvering through departments, charming board members, and playing politics. But Jordan's return today, quiet, unannounced, and with the kind of authority you couldn't fake, had shaken him. Carter picked up his phone and sent a short message. "He's back. Move up the timeline." The reply came instantly. "Understood." What timeline? What plan? Whatever it wasn't good. And out there, still walking with his backpack and dreams, Malik had no idea that his life was now part of something much bigger. The city was moving, the day was unfolding, and somewhere in the space between power and humility, between kindness and corruption, a storm was forming, but the pieces were only starting to fall into place. And neither Jordan nor Malik had any idea how soon everything was about to change. Jordan spent the rest of that day walking through the building, floor by floor, observing without drawing too much attention. Some employees recognized him and quickly straightened their posture or gave nervous smiles. Others glanced at him, then looked away, never realizing they were in the presence of the man who had built everything they worked for. He wasn't looking for applause. He was looking for patterns: how people treated each other, how decisions were made, and more importantly, who was really running the show while he was away. As he walked into the engineering floor, he noticed a cluster of young developers huddled around a screen. Laughter, energy, passionate, reminded him of how things used to be, that raw hunger to solve something. But just across the hall, a glass conference room revealed something different. Executives in suits whispering behind closed doors, some of them side-eyeing him through the blinds as if his very presence was an inconvenience. He'd felt this shift before. Not just in business, but in people. The ones who climb too fast often forget how they got there. Back upstairs, Carter Davis stood in front of the boardroom window, arms crossed, watching Jordan's every move on the internal surveillance feed. His jaw tightened. It wasn't just jealousy, it was fear. He had spent years positioning himself as the future of Carter Innovations. He had planted seeds of doubt in investors, subtly changed the tone of meetings, made Jordan's absence feel like abandonment. Now all of that was at risk. One unexpected return and everything could fall apart. Carter wasn't alone in this quiet rebellion. There were others. Some mid-level managers, some department heads, people who had benefited from Jordan's low visibility. They formed a loose circle, held together by whispered hallway conversations and shared ambition. No one had dared act against the company directly, but with Jordan back, and showing interest in low-level hires and fellowship candidates, they started to worry that their comfort was under threat. Meanwhile, Malik sat in a modest waiting room miles away, waiting for his interview for the youth fellowship. His knee bounced nervously as he rehearsed lines in his head. He had no idea that behind the mirrored glass wall, 3 executives were watching him, papers in hand, including his application file. One of them, a woman named Dana, looked impressed. "This kid's different," she said. "He's not just smart, he's grounded. He's had to work for everything." The man beside her, however, didn't look convinced. "He doesn't come from a background we usually recruit from. We're going to have to guide him through everything." "That takes resources." Dana looked at him sideways. "Or maybe it takes vision." A few hours later, Malik was walking home when his phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. "Malik, I read your application. I'd like to speak with you in person. Jordan Carter." He stared at the screen, frozen in place. His heart jumped. This had to be a mistake. The Jordan Carter, the billionaire? He looked around like someone might be watching him, then slowly typed back, trying to keep his hands steady. "Yes, sir, I'd be honored." While Malik read and reread the message in the upper levels of Carter Innovations, Jordan sat in a private lounge with Erica, sipping black coffee. He didn't smile. "I want to know everything about this kid before the meeting," he said. "Background, school, family, everything." Erica nodded, already tapping away at her tablet. "I'll pull it, but Jordan." "Why this one? We get hundreds of applicants." He looked out the window. "Because I saw something familiar in him. The way he gave up his seat without thinking twice. The way he stood back up like he didn't need anything in return. That's leadership. That's who we used to be." Erica paused. "And who we've become." Jordan didn't answer. He didn't have to. But while one door was quietly opening for Malik, another was being slammed shut behind the scenes. Carter Davis held an emergency meeting with a few of his closest allies in a dimly lit conference room after hours. He spread out a few documents. On the table, internal memos, travel records, investment reports. "He's poking around everything," Carter said. "Looking into operations, finances, even HR policies. If he starts asking questions about the offshore account," one of the men leaned forward, whispering, "then we're done." Carter nodded. "Which is why we need to move faster. He can't know how deep this goes, not yet." They all looked at each other in silence, the unspoken plan hanging heavy in the air. The following morning, Jordan arrived before anyone else. The hallways were empty, lights still dimmed. He liked the quiet, it gave him time to think. But when he entered his office, something was wrong. His private laptop was missing, the one he never used for meetings, never left in public. Only a few people knew it existed. Erica arrived moments later and saw the look on his face. "What happened?" "It's gone," he said. "Someone was in here." She checked the drawers, the side cabinet. Nothing else was touched. Just the laptop. Jordan's mind was already moving ahead. And there were files on there, files about the fellowship fund, company culture reviews, even his own notes on suspicious activities in recent months. "They're trying to cover their tracks," Jordan said quietly. "But they just gave themselves away." That same day, Malik received an official invitation. A black envelope with gold trim hand-delivered to his house. Inside was a formal letter inviting him to a private lunch meeting with Jordan Carter, and a car would be sent to pick him up. His mother held the invitation in her hands, tears welling up in her eyes. "You see what happens when you lead with kindness?" she whispered. "You see, baby?" Malik smiled, but something inside him still didn't feel real. He felt like he was standing at the edge of something big, something he wasn't prepared for but couldn't turn away from either. As he got ready for the meeting across town, Carter Davis was making one final call. I need the backup files from the server, every trace of the offshore activity scrubbed clean. If Jordan finds it before we're ready, it's over. Understood? The man on the other end replied coldly. Understood. And somewhere between the tension in the boardroom and the quiet pride in a small apartment, two worlds were about to collide. Because Jordan wasn't just meeting Malik to offer a scholarship, he had a plan. And Malik wasn't just a student. He was about to become part of something bigger, something that could either rebuild Carter Innovations from the inside out, or expose a truth that would tear it all down. But neither of them knew yet just how dangerous the truth had become. The black car pulled up quietly outside Malik's home. It was sleek, polished, and unlike anything he had ever ridden in. As he stepped out of the house, adjusting the collar of his iron shirt, his mom stood on the porch with her hand over her mouth, eyes full of pride and nervousness. Malik turned back and gave her a small wave, the kind that said, "I'll be okay. I think." He didn't know what to expect, but he could feel it. This wasn't just about a scholarship. It was something bigger, and his gut told him it was tied to more than just school. Meanwhile, Jordan sat in a private dining room inside one of the company's upper-floor lounges. The room was quiet except for the soft tick of a modern wall clock and the hum of the city outside the window. Erica stood near the door, phone in hand. "He's 5 minutes away," she said. Jordan nodded, tapping a file against the table. Inside were documents, Malik's school history, his letters of recommendation, and more recently, something strange, a red-flagged email traced back to an anonymous account. It mentioned Malik by name. It was vague, but the implication was clear. Someone didn't want this meeting to happen. "I don't like this," Erica said softly. "There's a pattern here. First the laptop goes missing, now this?" Jordan leaned back in his chair. "They're panicking. That means we're close to the truth." Downstairs, Malik stepped out of the elevator, escorted by a silent driver in a black suit. As he entered the hallway, the walls around him looked like something out of a dream. Glass doors, glowing lights, paintings on the walls. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. When the doors to the private lounge opened, Malik stood still for a moment. Jordan looked up and gave a nod. "Come in," he said. "Have a seat." Malik sat across from him, his hands resting in his lap, unsure whether to smile or stay serious. "You don't need to be nervous," Jordan said. "I didn't bring you here to test you. I brought you here because I saw something in you that this place used to be built on: integrity." Malik didn't quite know what to say, so he just nodded. Jordan reached for the file and slid it across the table. "But this goes deeper. There are people here trying to keep voices like yours out. They want to run this company their way. Safe, controlled, exclusive." Malik opened the file and saw pages with his own name. School records, community service awards, and then a printed email. "What is this?" he asked. "Someone tried to discredit you," Jordan said. "They sent an anonymous message to our internal board. They tried to make it seem like you had ties to someone criminal, but the timing was too perfect. It came right after I moved your application to the top." Malik's stomach dropped. "Why would someone do that?" "I don't even know anyone here." "Exactly," Jordan replied. "That's why it scared them." As they spoke, Carter Davis stood in his office, a secure call running through a private channel. "They're in the lounge right now," he said. "We don't have much time. If he brings that kid into the company, if he gives him access, everything falls apart. We need to shut this down before it hits the board." The voice on the other end of the line said, "Understood, we'll handle it." Back in the lounge, Jordan leaned forward. "I've been building this company for over a decade, Malik, but somewhere along the way, I stopped looking closely. I trusted the wrong people. They created a system that kept people like you on the outside. But that ends today. You're not just a candidate anymore. You're the future." Malik's hands were shaking slightly. "But you're not just anything," Jordan interrupted. "You remind me of myself, and I need someone like you here, not just to take the scholarship, but to help rebuild this place." Before Malik could respond, Erica stepped back into the room, her face pale. She leaned close to Jordan and whispered, "Someone tried to block the internal meeting invite you scheduled with the board. It's been deleted from the calendar, twice." Jordan stood up slowly. "They're making moves faster than I expected." He turned to Malik. "We don't have much time. I want you to come with me. I'm about to walk into a board meeting, and I want them to see who's going to sit at this table in the future." Malik blinked. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes," Jordan said firmly, "and I need you to trust me." As they stepped into the hallway together, someone watching through a live camera feed clicked off the screen. Across the building, Carter Davis rushed into a private office and slammed the door behind him. "Get everything ready," he said to his assistant. "If he goes through with this, we release the file, all of it." The assistant looked nervous. "You're really going to leak internal data?" Carter's eyes narrowed. "I won't let him rewrite this company. Not with a kid off the street, not on my watch." The tension inside Carter Innovations had reached its peak. Two paths were forming, one built on truth, the other on secrets. Jordan was ready to confront the board with Malik at his side. But the people working against them weren't just trying to hold on to power. They were willing to risk everything to keep the truth buried. The elevator climbed in silence. Malik could hear his own heartbeat. Jordan glanced over and said, "You still good?" Malik nodded. "Yeah, I think so." Jordan smiled just a little. "You're stronger than you think." As the doors opened to the boardroom floor, both of them stepped out into a war they didn't start, but were now right in the middle of. And behind those doors, the room was already full. Eyes were waiting, some ready to listen, some ready to destroy. What would happen next? Would change everything. As Jordan and Malik stepped into the boardroom, the air felt thicker than usual. The table was lined with familiar faces: executives, board members, legal advisors. Some gave curt nods. Others didn't even hide their surprise at Malik's presence. Whispers moved across the table like a wave, but Jordan didn't wait for permission. He walked straight to the head of the table, gestured for Malik to sit beside him, and placed a folder down with calm precision. "I called this meeting because we've lost sight of who we are," Jordan began, his voice steady. "Our company was built on innovation, access, and opportunity, not exclusion. Somewhere along the way, that changed." Across the room, Carter Davis sat still, hands folded, expression unreadable. Jordan opened the folder. "Someone attempted to discredit a scholarship finalist, this young man here, through an anonymous email. But that was just the surface. My private files were accessed without authorization. Internal data was tampered with. And someone has been manipulating the board calendar to delay this very meeting." Now the room shifted. Tension cracked like static. A few board members exchanged glances. Carter didn't flinch. Jordan continued, "I have reason to believe this isn't just a one-off incident. It's part of a pattern and organized effort to reshape this company from within for personal gain." That's when Carter stood up slowly, buttoning his jacket. "Jordan," he said with an almost friendly tone, "I think you're letting emotion drive your assumptions. We've all worked hard to keep this company thriving during your absence. Now you're accusing people without evidence?" Jordan turned to Erica, who walked in carrying a tablet. She projected a series of documents onto the room's smart screen. The data showed irregular fund transfers, fake vendor accounts, and internal memos redacted without trace. Jordan pointed to the screen. "That's not assumption, that's a breach. A cover-up. And someone in this room is behind it." Gasps echoed around the table, but Carter didn't blink. He calmly stepped forward. "Then I think this is the right time to share something as well," he said. He nodded toward an assistant near the door, who handed him a thin red folder. "Since we're discussing transparency," Carter said, looking directly at Jordan, "perhaps you should explain this." He opened the folder and laid it on the table. Inside were copies of sealed legal documents, ones Jordan had buried years ago. Personal files from a lawsuit involving one of his early business partners. The case was dismissed, but the details were raw accusations of breach of trust during the company's earliest days. The story had never reached the media. Jordan had handled it quietly, legally, and cleanly. But now it was being twisted into something else. "I thought we were focusing on the future," Jordan said coldly. "We are," Carter replied. "But when you start pointing fingers, the past matters too." The room was now fully divided. Some board members leaned back in shock. Others leaned in, eyes darting between the documents on the table and the ones on the screen. Malik sat frozen, completely out of his element, but not blind to what was happening. He was being used as both a symbol and a shield. Jordan had brought him in as proof of what the company should be. Carter was trying to paint that act as distraction. Malik could feel the pressure rising, but more than anything, he felt the danger of being dragged into a power struggle he barely understood. Jordan leaned in, locking eyes with Carter. "I knew you'd pull something like this, but that lawsuit, it wasn't about fraud. It was about someone who couldn't handle that. I didn't want to sell the company early for a quick profit. I stood my ground." "And I'd do it again," Carter smirked. "Of course you would. But I wonder how our investors would feel if they heard about it now, especially with the kind of headlines that can follow a kid like him around." He nodded subtly toward Malik. That's when Malik stood up, surprising everyone. His voice was quiet but clear. "You can talk about me like I'm a file in a folder, but I'm not. I'm a student, not a prop. I didn't ask to be part of this, but I'm not afraid to speak up either." For a split second, the room was still, and then Jordan stood beside him. "That right there," he said, "is exactly why I brought him here. That courage, that clarity, the same values we've lost." But before anything else could be said, Erica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. She whispered to Jordan, "You need to see this." She held up the screen. An encrypted email had just been leaked to several major tech blogs. The subject line read, "Top execs at billion-dollar company embezzling funds, leaked docs reveal the truth." Attached were pages of internal financial files, some of them Jordan's, but many showing the fraudulent activity Carter and his allies had buried. Jordan's stomach dropped. It was all coming out, but not on his terms. Carter's face drained of color. "What did you do?" he snapped. Jordan looked back at him. "I didn't leak it." The room exploded into chaos. Phones buzzed. Board members began stepping out, whispering into their earpieces. And in that moment, no one knew who had leaked the files. Was it someone inside Jordan's circle? A whistleblower tired of corruption? Or someone else altogether trying to burn everything down, company, legacy, and all? Malik stepped back as people rushed past him. His eyes met Jordan's. "What happens now?" Jordan didn't answer. He just looked down at the table, where all the secrets had finally landed. The truth was out. But the war was just beginning. Never judge someone's worth by their appearance or silence, because the person you dismiss today might be the one who owns the very ground you stand on. Kindness, humility, and respect cost nothing, but they reveal everything. And to encourage engagement on your video, you can end with, "If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and follow for more powerful true stories that open eyes and change hearts."